call to order the Village of Ashwaubenon Park and Rec Board for Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Chris Zerval,
Yep.
Tracy Flukie.
Yes.
Tracy Flukie.
We're used to the delay.
Gene Hess,
Here.
Heidi Murphy,
Here.
Mark Castonian,
Here.
Donovan Miller,
Here.
and Ron Maurman.
Here. All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, and please remember our men and women here and abroad that are help keeping us safe. Action on the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion approves. Action on the minutes from May 21st, the 2024 Park Board meeting.
Motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Almost forgot the word. All right, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named. The board is not able to take action at this meeting. There's nobody in the audience, nobody online. Comments from the public. We'll move on. No written communications today. We'll move on to 8A, consider, discuss, and act on ordering amenities for the new park on Element Way. Rex?
All right, last month, a lot of this information was brought forward to you regarding the park that we're gonna be putting in. So typically the design and everything was approved, but now's the time to start spending some money. So back to the park board, back to the village board to hash over if there's concerns or whatnot on the budgetary work that we've done with Rettler to, which you have in front of you on the budgetary page. So I will say, I mean, nothing is cheap anymore these days. So it's, you know, everything is expensive, especially when you're bidding it out. Is we would have to do most of the stuff here. Some of the stuff we are able to do ourselves, which is what we work with Rettler a lot on. In fact, we work with Rettler instead of their normal fee. They work with us on an hourly basis because there's stuff that we are going to be doing in-house, which we will be going over on this sheet. That they don't have to supervise or work on us with. So it'd be more cost effective for us to go on an hourly basis with Rettler, which is what we're doing on this consulting engineering design program. So that being said, we've got a number of items on here which we would need to start getting through the supply chain. Number one being the playground equipment, because that takes at least a couple months to manufacture, and our hope is to try and get some of this stuff, if not a lot of it, in this year. That's our goal. I don't know if we're going to be meeting it or not. We've got a playground build at Valley View that we're going to be doing for the school district. We've got a fairly large playground build at Waterford Park that we're going to be putting in end of July. So we're looking at this probably in the early to mid fall, if we can get the stuff in by then, in terms of design and things like that. So I guess what I would like to do is on the sheet that is the green and pink colored sheet, which is the master plan sheet, I guess, with the budgetary numbers. I'd like to go over that kind of on a box by box thing with you. And if anyone has questions, that would be the time to ask them or discuss them at that point. So the first box is earthwork demolition. So I'm not sure if you've been out to that park or seen it, but we have already started that on our own. So village crews have basically ripped out all of the asphalt driveway from the apartment building that used to be there, the asphalt parking lot that used to be there. We have ripped out the southern fence line. We started out trimming the buckthorn, cutting it back, and then last week, they pulled out all the root system on the buckthorn, because that was fairly thick, and then they regraded it and reseeded it. So, other than the western fence, which is kind of separating that current lot from the apartment building immediately to the west, the lot's ready to go for the contractors. Now, that is something that, when Rettler first did this with us, it was over a $500,000 estimate. But that's with someone else doing everything and with us doing nothing. So, and that's what myself and David, our recreation supervisor, have been working with Rettler on, is what are we gonna be able to do? What are we gonna have time to be able to do? And what kind of cost savings we're gonna be able to realize that for, by doing it that way. And that's where we are today. So there is still some earthwork and demolition. You can see some of the stuff. Now you realize a lot of this stuff is actually going to be, no matter what we put in there, there's going to be earthwork demolition that needs to be done. And think of like think a lot of the concrete. They're going to need to dig that out. They're going to need to be putting gravel in. We're looking at some grading, although I think Rettler and us have a little bit of a discrepancy on how much grading needs to be done. Some of the grass there is good. It's more of the height of what we have the ability, where the concrete's gonna be versus where the playground's gonna be. Everything's gonna be off of the playground. So the playground has to go in first. And then the concrete will be poured around the playground, and then we wanna sheet everything away from that playground so the water doesn't go into the playground. That being said, there's still probably going to be a little bit of a drain, an under drain that we're gonna put in the playground, and we're gonna try and connect it to, I wanna say the storm or sanitary, which is legal to do in this case, for this type of project. That way, you're not gonna have a pool of water in the playground area from whatever storm comes around. And it'll be usable after a storm, rather than having it sit for 3, 4, 5 days till it dries out. Stripping, placing topsoil, seed, fertilizer, mulch, common green space. There's some costs there, and that's for some of our own costs. On the very far right column, you'll see whether the contractor is going to be doing something or whether the village is going to be able to do something. So for the seeding, fertilizing, mulching, a lot of that is being done by the village. Our crews can do that. We've got some great people that know how to run a lot of our equipment and a lot of the pieces of public works equipment. And so fortunately, we can do a lot of this on our own. And then erosion control, whenever you're digging up dirt and there's somewhat of a slope that goes to the curb, you're gonna have to put up, silt fencing and block off the sewers and so on and so forth. So we have, some costs involved in that as well, by the contractor for whenever they do it. Questions on the earthwork or demolition? If not, moving on to utilities. Talked about this a little bit. This is an under drain for the playground area so that the water doesn't accumulate in the playground. See, people don't realize what it costs to build a park. It's not cheap, it's not just an open piece of land, but site electrical and service allowance. So again, no matter if we have bollards or overhead lighting or whatever kind of lighting we have, we're gonna have utility costs. We're gonna have to run electrical wire underground. We're gonna have to have a power box, a meter, that type of thing. We could potentially be running it off of street lighting, which would help save us in some costs, obviously. A lot of our parks, the security lights in our parks are run off of the street light program, and we hooked up to that particular line. But that being said, even if it is off of the street lights, there's gonna be connections that need to be made. So they're gonna have to dig down, find out where the wiring systems are, and wire into that street light system. So there's some costs there. The water fountain drain pipe, back in the fall, I don't know if you guys remember, but we actually had, before they we wanted to do this before they put the second lift of asphalt on the roadway, because the water line is on opposite side of the road. So we had them dig through the roadway before that second lift was put on and run a pipe into the park in a basically a turn box, basically, into the park. So the good thing is we don't have to tear up the street to get water for our drinking fountain. It's already run into the park. It's on the north side. Really, the distance we're gonna need to run the drinking fountain line is probably from me to Chris away. So we planned that out pretty good, but that still is a cost for running that drinking fountain line. And then we'd probably take that drain and tap it into the sewer line, the stormwater line as well. That way you're not gonna have, some of our parks are just basically drinking fountains and the water runs out underneath and it's all over the sidewalk and it's wet and slippery and sometimes if there's shade, it gets, some algae growing and we're trying to avoid that. We did this with Sand Acres when we built Sand Acres, a little while back, and we're gonna do the same thing as we wanna tap into the water, the stormwater drain and basically just run the wastewater from the drinking fountain back into the storm. And the water utility allowance, same thing. So questions on the utilities, either electric or the water? Ron?
I was pleased to see that they added the 2 bullards or whatever the lights are over by the playground, which we had talked about last month. I think
Yep.
it's a significant improvement.
Yeah, we did do that, and that was actually a very good comment or suggestion, just to increase the security lighting around there, especially on the back side. You don't want any back corners that are dark where kids can hang out in and do things that aren't really appropriate. So that was a good addition. The playground, which is what we're going to need to order soon. The engineered wood fiber, so I know there's a couple there, if everyone knows this, so it's not, for a playground, it's not, you can't just dump wood chips in. They're called it's called engineered wood fiber. So what they do at these wood processing places is to get it certified. Otherwise, it becomes very sharp. When the kids fall on it, if it's not tumbled, it basically can pierce the kid's skin. You don't want that. So what it is it's called tumbled. So they put the wood chips in this giant drum per se, and they're tumbled, and that takes all the sharp edges off of them, and that's called engineered wood fiber. The other option for that, which you're seeing some communities do, is do an all rubberized surfacing. All rubberized surfacing is great. We've got some sections, our ADA targeted parks all have some rubberized surfacing, whether it be Smith Park or Ashwaubenon or Sand Acres. They've all got a little rubberized surfacing. We don't have any what's called a universal playground where the whole playground is rubberized, just because of the cost. Rubberized surfacing will cost almost as much as the playground equipment itself if you were to put rubberized surfacing on a playground. So that's why for this particular playground, it's being recommended to go with the engineered wood fiber, which is what we use at all the other parks. I'm guessing we'll probably use about 2 truckloads, and that's probably gonna run about $5,000 for the wood chips to start out there. Depending on how long they last, since there's an under drain proposed for this, the wood chips probably would last about 5 or 6 years. You might need to fill in a couple of low spots, but before we had to top dress and fill in some of the low spots as they start to break down. And you can keep on top dressing and adding wood chips, but eventually what happens then is all those, you're top dressing, those bottom layers deteriorate basically to dirt. And then you've got to dig the whole thing up and start all over again. But that's years down the line. So basically, when it comes to playground surfacing, sorry, making this a long story, you're either paying now or you're paying later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if we were to do rubberized surfacing on this, it probably would probably cost at least another $25,000 or $30,000 to put rubberized surfacing down. And so right now with the wood chips, we do $5,000 now. In 3, 4, 5 years, we probably add in we're not gonna need another full load, so we probably have like a half load brought over here, so it would be $1,000 roughly every 3 or 4 years moving forward. So it spreads the paint out a little bit more versus, but the rubberized surfacing is really nice. But, you know, so I'm gonna throw that out at you guys. Right now, we've got rubberized, or the wood chips planned for this particular site.
But we use the wood chips in other parks anyway, so when we're ordering for other parks and we need a top dress, we'll just
Yep.
sprinkle what we need, and
And that's what we do, we fill in the low spots.
so so it's not an inconvenience to
Make sure
order.
that the wood chips are for a safety zone, it's a fall protection. So on most pieces of playground equipment, you need a foot, 12 inches of good wood chips to create that fall protection that meets the consumer product safety standards. And so then, like I said, over time, you know, the bottom layers start to deteriorate, turn more to dirt, and then it loses that fall protection per se. And now you've got 8 inches instead of 12, so then you gotta add another 4 of new wood chips. Eventually you get too much, it gets too high. So then you gotta just basically dig the whole thing out, and which isn't that big of a deal, I should say. But eventually you gotta clear it out and start over again when it comes to,
Is eventually like 20 years?
what's
Or
that?
How many years does that take? 20?
It really, it depends on a couple factors, Heidi. It depends on the usage, you know, how many kids are using it and packing it down and rubbing and making it fall apart. It also depends on the drainage. If there's no drainage, it's not gonna last much longer because the water that's trapped in there is gonna continue to deteriorate it itself. With an under drain, it'll certainly help. I can't give an exact number, but we know that under drains do prolong the life of our wood chips.
Are there other parks that it would be comparable to in the village already?
We don't have one that's tapped into a storm. We've got Argonne, we kind of made like French drains where you have your bottom layer here, but then we dug down another 8 inches and basically filled it up with stone or gravel. So that way, you know, and then we kind of sheeted it towards a low area in the park that just would drain out onto the grass. So some unused area of the park might be wet for an extra couple of days, but the playground dries out quicker. Argonne Park is a good example of that. That's kind of where we did it there. But there's not a lot of space to do that with at this park. So that's why we're kind of looking at trying to direct it directly into a storm.
My one question with the drain then, the location of it will be fairly accessible for in the future when we do have the deteriorated debris that starts clogging that up where we could, I'm assuming, right? So.
Yeah, yep. That's all part of it. We'd have, there would be a clean out port type of thing. We've got an under drain actually around the Pioneer Park tennis courts. Because we had problems back in the day where those were cracking a lot and it was holding a lot of water because the tennis courts are lower than a lot of the softball fields around. So when we redid those, was it 10 years ago already? That we put an under drain all the way around the court. It's probably down about 5 or 6 feet and it tapped it right into the storm. And we haven't had any cracking issues since we've done that. So
Perfect.
This would be very similar.
Thank you.
All right. So we're good with utilities? Okay, moving on to the playground. We talked about this already. You have this sheet. I think everyone was good with this design. I had David, our recreation supervisor, work with the playground manufacturer. This is Miracle Equipment, which if you go to Clipstein, then we have that giant fish that's right in front of the community center. That's Miracle Equipment, same type of equipment. It's a well-known manufacturer. We like to do something different so every park doesn't always look the same. And we don't want our parks to look like every other park in the area. This particular design is called a center stage. So if you take a look at the main structure in the middle, it's like one giant post that comes up with kind of arms that then veer out and hold the platform that the kids run on, on the main piece. So I think it's a really good design. We have a couple of play panels, some newer style play panels that have come out that we thought would be a good addition. So that's the playground equipment.
What age group is that for, Rex?
This is gonna be for the 2 to 12. So it kind of runs the gamut for both ages. Again, playground equipment, you can get playground equipment in the 2 to 5-year-old category. You can get equipment in the 5 to 12-year-old category. You can also kind of wing it and do some more higher risk equipment. But most of our equipment is you know, in the 2 to 5 or the 5 to 12. You can combine them and do a 2 to 12, which is what this is. This isn't really meant for the older kids per se. It's meant for more of the elementary age, the toddler and elementary age, you know, is what this is meant for the design. And then we've got just a concrete ring around it to basically hold stuff in. So questions on the playground?
So Rex, 50,000 for the playground, you think is gonna cover it?
Yeah, so how we do our playground equipment, Tracy, is David basically worked with Miracle and said, design us a $50,000 playground.
Okay.
So
That's-
if we were to call them up after the village board, if it gets that far, if we were to call them up next Wednesday after the village board meeting, if we get approval and say, we want that playground, it would be $50,000.
Okay.
So that's what this design is. That's what you're going to get for 50. Sidewalks and plaza. Everyone kind of has a view of on their map, on your colored map. So we have 2 entry points on our plaza area. North entry point, obviously, is more of a sidewalk, except around number 17, which is the shelter, not a shelter, but more like a sun shade area. And then I know we had talked about wanting a little bit more seating around that area for some of the loose chairs and whatnot. So they expanded that concrete out a little bit more on each side of number 17, compared to the last map that you probably got, if you were comparing to last month. So that's expanded out a little bit more based on the comments from the park board. And then, of course, you can see it's almost like a plaza area, really, directly in front of the playground area. That's where we've got our seating. So that had to be wider, obviously, for not only the walkway to walk around, but to accommodate the benches and tables that are there. So this is probably the biggest, the concrete's probably one of the bigger expenses, other than the playground equipment in and of itself. It's concrete, and so they've got to dig it down, they've got to use, form it up, gravel, they've got to compact the gravel, they've got to pour the concrete, put the rebar in, and then some finishing stuff. So that's probably one of the bigger costs of this whole project, as it would be with any park, is the concrete work. And remember, we're trying to make our parks more accessible. A lot of back in the day when people built parks, they basically just there's a grass field, cut grass. Tracy knows, she's been around as long as I have. It's basically an open field, and then you plant the playground, in the middle of it, and you put some picnic tables around it, and called her good. That's the park. Well, that's not typically how parks are made anymore these days. You need to make them more accessible for people of different for folks that may have mobility challenges. One of our long-range goals in our corporate plan, as well as our smart growth plan for the village, is to try and create gathering areas in parks, so neighbors can come and meet and talk and you know, whether they have children or not, just an option, a place for them to go to outside, which is why we have those tables there and whatnot. So, we call them gathering areas. And you can actually see that the Element and Bohemian tried to do a little bit of that in some of their areas as well, where they've got some tables and chairs kind of butted up directly against their buildings, where people can do that. So, concrete 5-inch depth, graded base, you know, that's probably gonna run about, what, 26,000 on that. So, questions on the concrete? Moving on, we got the bag toss area, for people who play bags. You know, I haven't double checked the costs on the bag themselves, on the bag boards themselves. They're not boards, they're made out of concrete. Very similar to what we have on the back side of the community center already, that people use during their permits. That we may or may not be able to save a few dollars there, but obviously, we've got the bag toss area as well, which are the bag tosses themselves, and then the concrete, so people can walk out there and play.
Do we provide the bags for those, or is that something people bring their own bags?
People will be doing that on their own.
Okay.
You can buy a set of cornhole bags
Right.
over at Dick's for like $15. It comes in a little plastic bucket.
Quite familiar.
What's that?
I'm quite familiar.
Okay. Sounds like that's maybe a challenge once it gets done.
Calm down.
When we do the ribbon cutting, that, you know, maybe that's gonna be one of the things is.
Careful.
You know, park board members have a little cornhole.
Challenge.
Rex, I haven't used the concrete cornhole boards, but is the surface on there fairly smooth and sealed?
They polished it. They
Polished it
and
out?
sealed it.
Okay.
Yeah. Polished and sealed it. Now, is it as smooth as the wood? Probably not. You know, over time, it probably needs to be waxed or repolished or something like that. We haven't had the need to do the ones behind the community center. We've had them for, about 8 years right now. And people still play on those. So,
I'll be out
so yeah,
there
not
practicing.
not as nice and slick as the wood ones, but for a park setting like this, they're doable.
Better than the ones in the parking lot at tailgating for the Packer game, I bet, yeah.
Listen.
What's that?
So it's probably better than the ones in the parking lot at the Packer games, but those are probably soaked and sticky.
All right, buildings and miscellaneous amenities. This is on the second page of the Rattler, and there's some things are good. So the cantilevered shade structure, we've got that at 45. That's number 17. We just got pricing in because we're calling our rep from Polygon. So the structure itself, as presented on the overall picture, is going to run about $28,000 with the 2 seats in between, that type of thing. So the question was, can we lower that price? And the thought is, just because of the size of the structure and the amount of work our staff is doing already, if we get it and we wind up can do it ourselves, we'll do it. But at this point, I'd rather keep the dollars in there to have the contractor install it, just because we're already gonna be pushing it, because once the fall hits, we're gonna be doing a lot of work for the NFL draft coming up in 25, so we don't know how much time, once the fall hits, we're truly going to have. So at this point, we have it being installed by, it's not that our guys couldn't do it, but they've never done it before, so it's gonna take a little bit of time to figure it out. So we'd rather have it installed by the contractor if we're able to afford it. So that's why that's at 45, and the budget number we got really is at about 28. So that, we just figured that amount in for the installation. Whoever will get the general for that.
Rex, does that include the 2 benches that are in the,
Yep, it's a custom shelter, so it includes the benches.
and what is the length of each of those 2 benches?
I believe they are either 6 or 8 feet. I believe they're 16 because it's a 16 believe it's a 16, hold on a second here. Got it right.
You have 3 supports in that shelter, so the 2 will be on the outside, the one in the middle, so I figured probably,
The steel frame is 8 by 20,
okay,
so my guess is they're going to be, they could even be 8-foot bench in between,
I figured they'd probably be around 8,
6 to 8.
giving you some space between the supports.
Yep.
Okay.
Then we've got some shale slab seating. Those are the natural rocks on the backside of the playground, which you kind of see in there, number 15, on your map. We've got the concrete star benches. Some of these are kind of fancy. You've got the tables with the umbrellas, the funky ones, kind of more of a modern, futuristic look. The site furniture, we talked about adding in some of that recycled plastic seating around number 17 at the last meeting. Drinking fountain with the dog bowl. The drinking fountain came in at 10. I got a price, the one that we're looking at is $7,500 plus shipping. So really that's more and more. And again, Rettler has numbers that they just plug in. In reality, the drinking fountain will probably cost us $8,000. So, you take 2,000 off of that. But again, when Rettler puts these numbers together, they want to make sure they play it safe. They'd rather be over a little bit versus short on money, when they're doing these projections.
Are the structures going to have the colors that are pictured here, or is that just kind of to get the shape?
Sorry, Heidi, what?
Are the structures going to have like the colors, so like the cantilever, the bubbler, because we call that
We can
a
order
bubbler?
whatever colors we want. I'm thinking we're gonna do more of a navy blue because it kind of matches the playground.
Okay, so that was my question, is if the aesthetics of the entire area are taken into consideration? Because that red cantilever doesn't go with the playground.
I'm sorry, the what?
There's red on the cantilever, number 17.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
It'll be, you can order, the poles will probably, poles will probably
Okay.
be white or whatever, and then we'll
I was just curious if
do a
that's,
blue roof to match the
okay,
playground equipment.
thank you.
Yep. Bike rack, dog waste station, decorative fencing. We just got that quote in from Fortress Fence, which is now Century Fence. So that's where that number came from. That the 4 foot high fence.
And is that gonna look like the black, that's shown in number 4 on the top right?
Correct.
Okay,
Actually, it a little bit different. It's gonna have a single bar on top. See how there's it's hard to see. There's 2 bars on top and 2 on the bottom.
Mhm.
This one has a single bar on top and a double bar on the bottom.
okay.
Maintenance strip with the landscape edging, that's just on the fence, so it's a maintenance strips that's put in the ground. It prevents grass from growing. It's not exceptionally long. It's more in that longer strip, like behind the bag area along the fence line. Basically prevents grass from growing underneath the fence, and then now you don't have to weed whack every time you're there. Because the mower will not be able to get the grass that's growing up adjacent to the fence unless it wants to take a chance of catching the fence and ripping the fence out, which sometimes happens at our baseball diamonds, as you guys know, if they get a little too close. So that's they're called maintenance strips, and it's a maintenance saver in terms of not needing then to do the weed whacking all the time. Lighted bollard, we talked about that. 6 of those, that's good around 25. Landscape planting allowance, that's for the actual trees and shrubs, which will be planted by our own staff. So we're not gonna hire a landscaper or anything to do that. That's gonna be a work in progress, whereas Tim's able to get in there and do planting in different areas of the park, so we can do that on our own.
Is there an option for like one of those adopt a park? Where like when the Girl Scouts go plant flowers and stuff like that? Is there a space available for that?
To do the Adopt a Park program?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Or like a small bed? Okay.
yep, absolutely. So, and then the landscape mulch is just mulch that we can produce on our own. It's for that kind of mulch that's not playground mulch, we can get that on our own, so. There you go. All those lovely things. You got the construction items that total $314,000. We have a 10% contingency in case we find something that doesn't work, or a bad soil, or maybe as you're tapping into the storm sewer, the pipe collapses, and now I gotta replace one of the sections of storm. You know, weird things sometimes happen, so you wanna have a little bit of a contingency, which is what that is. So then the construction estimate subtotal is $345. And we're hoping we don't get all the way there, obviously. But that's the budgetary numbers for this park, of what it's gonna cost. Now, that'll take a good part of our park development fund, to be able to do it. My hope is that we can use part of the park development fund and part of it with TIF funding. You know, kind of share it a little bit, that'll allow extra funding in the park development fund to work on either the Argonne project or to be put towards the Ashwaubenon River Trail, which will be going out to bid within a couple of weeks. Questions on any numbers, on anything that you're seeing?
My only one was on the number 7, table and chair. Are those mounted? They look like they're one piece. Do you know if, they look hard to steal, which is great, but, I don't know if they're mounted in or if they can blow over or,
So those are hardened, they're stainless steel bases, okay? And so they would be mounted onto, they're not inset into a footing, but they'll be placed on top of the concrete, and then there'll be like clamps that go on it, that mount it onto the concrete.
yeah, good.
Or secure it to the concrete so that, number one, it doesn't tip, or they don't decide, well, let's move this table over here.
That's the piece, like all of a sudden you're gonna be all in the middle of the grass and your guys are gonna have to
We
move.
don't
Okay,
want that.
perfect, excellent, thank you.
Rex, are you gonna have a sign in the park with the name of the park? Like Heidi's question about the gardens that we have around a lot of our park signs, is there gonna be something like that in there?
We do have that. We don't have an official park name yet. That's gonna
Yeah.
be part of the whole process coming up, but yeah, we'll eventually wanna figure out whether we want, what kind of sign we want. We haven't gone there quite yet,
Okay,
but eventually, yeah, we'll definitely wanna, probably somewhere on the corner, you know,
Yeah.
one way or the other, where
yeah, like the
we say
northeast
what-
corner.
we say what the park name is.
Okay,
I don't think we have a park where we don't have a park sign.
that's what I was thinking too.
All right, any other questions?
The dashed yellow line, is that just the lot line? Like the survey line? Around the perimeter?
Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking that's just the official park boundary
Okay,
from the sidewalk in, yeah.
and then the purple, like, in between the 4 and 18, those purple circles, is that a tree? Is that supposed to be a tree?
Those are probably gonna be shrubs.
Shrubs? Okay,
Purple are shrubs, green are trees.
okay.
The big tree that's currently on the corner where number 10 is shown right now on the map, that unfortunately will be cut down very shortly. That's done.
EAB?
No, it's not EAB, it's not an ash tree, it's well, number one, it was hit somewhere down the line, there's a huge crack in it,
Wasn't me.
and I'm guessing there's some root girdling involved. If you take a look at it, especially on the backside, it's in pretty rough shape, you don't want it standing, and you can see it's so thin and air,
Okay.
it's dying out on its own. So, it's better to take her down now and just
The sooner the better.
redo it. So you've taken a look at it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's rough. It's rough. It's got a big blue dot of death on it right now.
No.
There's still a few of those in my neighborhood.
So, Do you guys have questions on the park at all? Are you comfortable with where we're at dollar-wise? And I will say that we work with Rutler a lot, and then I talk with our forester, Tim, and obviously our park maintenance crew about what's doable and what's not, and based off of their feedback, I mean, they're excited to do this, because they get to really help build it. So we are doing, a fair amount of work on our own, but
I think it's really exciting because when this was initially brought up, it was talked about how it's such a small space. But there's a lot going on in that small space, and I think it's indicative of what's kind of going on in that area with the apartments. You've got a lot of people in a small amount of space and more of an urban type feel versus,
I'm kind of excited to try
Little
some of
green
the
bay.
bollard lighting out, quite honestly. We don't have any of that in our parks right now. It'd be interesting to see how that looks at night.
It'd be a good fit, cause it's,
It will be a good fit.
with the new apartments and stuff, Bohemian and
Yeah,
Element, like,
Bohemian has a lot of bollard lighting around it.
well, and just more of the modern architecture.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I think that's gonna fit really nicely.
Be interesting to see how busy it is, because I think there's more kids in that area than people realize. There's more kids in those apartments that people realize, and then you already have the Marvell apartments that are across the street. And those apartments have quite a few kids, so it'd be interesting to see how many use this park. The Marvell apartments have some of their own playground equipment, but I'll be honest with you, it's not in the best of shape right now. So I think there will be a lot of parents excited that this park is being built without having to cross a busy street.
Will that have both recycle and regular dumps, garbage wise?
That's a good question, Ron, and I don't know. We try both at our parks. Some of them work, like, it works in front of our community center. We've got recycled and we've got regular garbage. I'll be honest with you, in the normal park setting, we have found it doesn't work. And it has not worked, and that's why we're getting away from it at like our food truck rallies, which you would think it would be great because of all the cans from the beverages that people are consuming. But people don't throw them in separate containers. They got their food, they've got their cans, their plastic bottles, and they throw it all in one. It doesn't matter if they're side by side, and you can have blinking lights that say recycle. And when you start to commingle the trash and the recycling, then the recycling center refuses to take it. And then it all gets thrown away. So at some parks it works, at other parks it is not working. And so we're kind of selective, quite honestly, of where we're putting, because in a lot of places, we're finding it just isn't working. I mean, there'll be dog doo-doo in the recycling containers, and it's just, we try, but in most public park settings is not working the way it needs to be.
Unfortunately, this may be a local dumping area too, because of the proximity of that area.
Well, we shall see. Question?
Yeah, speaking of the, garbage, where is anything gonna be located? As far as
No,
cans or,
it's not shown here on the map. We'll probably have like 2 garbage cans, one by the playground area and one over by the beanbag toss area.
okay. All right, anything else? No, okay, good information, thanks Rex.
Yep.
We'll move on, park rep.
I need the approval.
Oh,
Spending some money.
this is, yeah.
To make a,
Nice try, Chris.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended amenities for the park.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
This looks really great. Thank you very much. Like,
Well, thank
I
you
like
guys.
a lot.
These are fun projects to work on and talk about with you guys, so.
Okay,
right,
now, department reports.
Department of Reports, Aquatics, the lake is open. Last week was a little slow. This week we're a little busier
It was hopping today.
because it's hot.
Did you go today?
I didn't go in the lake.
Mel is doing a good job as always, in terms of staffing. She just hired on 3 more lifeguards, last week, which is awesome. So they're helping out already, filling in. The lake is going smoothly. If you've driven by the lake, you can see in May, our crew installed that sun shelter. We ordered a fairly large sun shelter as part of the CORP program, Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. That was one of the things that was on our list for a number of years. We ordered that other shelter last year. We got it in too late to install in '23. But we installed it in May of this year, and it's already going over very, very well. People, even though they're going to the beach, they still like to sit underneath the shade, especially if they've got younger kids. So when you get out of the water, people like to have the kids to sit under the shade. So FYI, that's going over well. We hosted the youth triathlon on June 1st with 100 athletes. Learn to Swim program began last week as well. I don't know the exact numbers on that right now, but I know there's a fair amount of people in there. We've got a food truck rally this coming Thursday at Ashwaubenon, and the theme at the lake will be a Fiesta Beach Party. Whenever the lake is open during our food truck rally, so that'll be for the June and July ones. We're open till 8 o'clock, so that way parents can have fun listening to the band or whatever it is at the food truck rally, and the kids can go swimming. So it's a nice marriage there, I guess. And then we are doing our first weekend. It's called the Show at Schmay. So it's actually the Little Mermaid, and we're doing it on a giant movie screen that can be seen during the daytime. It's a special screen that's mounted on a truck. We actually had it last year, I believe, at the Ashwaubenon Blast, showing some different things on there. But that's, I believe, coming up this Saturday with the Little Mermaid. Forestry, again, all of our seasonal staff are on board now, so a lot of planting, a lot of cleanup. Forestry staff was out at Ashwaubenon today. Stantec, which is a consulting and design firm that we're using for both the Cabela's project and our NRDA project out at Ashwaubenon and Dutchman's Creek. So it's Stantec, and every year they have a community day. And they've worked with us. I think this is the 3rd or 4th community day that they've done with us. Well, they brought in about 20 or 25 staff this morning. And worked with our forestry staff, and I think we had about 5 or 6 truckloads of mulch. So if you go into Ashwaubenon Park, they help lay and distribute all the mulch around our flower beds, the entryway to the baseball complex, where we kind of did that pollinator garden right there at the first entryway. That's all now freshly mulched, so it makes for a real nice clean look. So they've been busy, a lot of stuff going on. Tim is still working, with the companies on the EAB removals. I don't think they're in the village right now. They've done some work. Like I said, that's gonna be kind of hit and miss of when they come back, and they'll do a couple blocks or a certain area, and then they'll be gone for a while. But that is still going on. We have received a few calls on, hey, when am I gonna get my tree replanted? I get it. People are like, well, that was like, we lost that tree like a year or two ago. Where's my new one? The most efficient way to do it is to do them all at once, rather than one here, one there. Is to basically bring in truckloads of trees, and it's almost like the Henry Ford assembly line method, just kind of do them all at once. So we're looking at starting that this fall, certainly in '25. Again, it all depends on timing and when some of the other work gets done, but the replanting will happen within the next year. We can't give a date, we don't have a date yet. That will be determined by when the other ash trees are taken down, and when all those are down, and when all the stumps are ground, then we can start looking at, okay, now it's replanting time. And that's when they'll be digging the holes and then moving the truck down the street and putting the new trees in, all at once. Parks, we had the ribbon cutting ceremony this morning for the Ashwaubenon River Trail Bridge, which went over very well. It was a little hot. Still didn't learn my lesson, and the top of my head got sunburned a little bit. Not happy about that. But it was a nice ceremony. We had a number of people there from the public, Bike and Ped Committee, village board members, some park board members were there. So it was a nice crowd. We tried out our grilling trailer for the first time today. And we grilled hot dogs with that and gave out lemonade for the people that were in attendance, did some speeches, and, congratulations, and did the official ribbon cutting. So that went over well. I want to say about 40 people maybe-ish, 40, 50 people maybe, somewhere around there. County Executive Streckenbach was there, which was, it was nice to see him attend. So yeah, went over well. We had a representative from the Rita and David Foundation, Nelson Foundation, that gave us the money for the plaza area. So we had some foundation members. It's run through the Fox Valley Community Foundation, and so we had some representatives there. So it was a nice ceremony. We've got a memorial bench that has been installed at Canterbury Park, and too late for this publishing, I believe, but we have also just installed a memorial bench at Skyline Park. So those are the two memorial benches we've gotten in so far this year. So that's always nice. We've got wood chips that were delivered, so those are put in on Mike Van Park, and then I saw a couple other parks had some low spots filled in, so I know the guys are moving some of those around. The Great Ashwaubenon Cleanup will be held this Saturday. That's typically when, if some of the scout groups are interested, they will meet us Saturday morning. I've got some forestry staff that will be there. So we'll tackle some additional buckthorn areas in the park and try and clear some of those out. That'll be Saturday from 9 till 11:30. If you've got the gumption, you're welcome to join us. You get free hot dogs again. We'll have the grilling trailer out there, and you get a free pass to the lake if you help out. So, but that's been going on for, probably at least 15 years, where we've had the scouts involved, and they've done a tremendous job of helping remove a lot of that buckthorn in Ashwaubenon. What else do we got? Park program, recreation stuff. Day camp started. Park program has started at our 7 parks. Dance program has started. A lot of our youth classes have started. I talked a little bit about softball. Softball now is in full swing, including our Tuesday night league of all of a sudden 16 modified teams materialized that we haven't had in our program for about 5 years out of the blue. So now they're out there tonight. They'll be playing, actually. All 4 dinos will be modified ball again. So that's nice to have them back. Questions on anything that's on here in terms of things that we're doing in our department, or things that aren't on here that you've got questions on or that you've noticed?
Rex, what is the Express Fitness classes? Looks like it's something new.
Under recreation, the second
Yep.
last bullet.
Yep, so David has been working to try and fill some of the open spots in the community center. They're just regular fitness classes. It's just a different tweak to them, I guess, where they're not as long. They're like quick type things. So I don't have the full details on them. I apologize.
Rex, has anybody contacted you? Because I've had in the last year, a couple of residents that live Sherwood Forest, and their homes butt up against the park, the trail. And they're mentioning that it's getting pretty nasty back in those areas with all the foliage and stuff. And they had actually mentioned to me about what the village thought about bringing some goats in there.
Well, they've got goats out on Renard Isle.
Yeah.
Trying to knock those down, but that's an island.
Yeah.
I typically, unless it's like poison ivy or something like that, we typically don't go in there and do any cutting per se.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say about a porta potty, so I might as well tell you guys that we've had a number of requests for a porta potty at Sherwood. And I've been trying to hold back on that, but one of the reasons we're holding back, and there's a couple, but the main one is right now, there's a lot of shift in our homeless population, and public safety on a weekly basis is moving people out of Sherwood Forest that are deep in Sherwood Forest that are literally camping back in there. By having a porta potty, it's only going to attract more of that, and I mean a lot more of that.
And that's not easy to patrol back there
No, it's not easy to patrol because they're doing it,
on foot.
they're probably even doing it on private property, because if you go deep enough in there, that's actually the backyards of the homeowners association in Green Bay, as well as the backyards of some residents in Ashwaubenon. That people don't realize that woods is not necessarily all public woods, a lot of it is private as you go farther to the west. And that's where a lot of those encampments are. So those folks have been asked to move on, but that's becoming a somewhat regular thing. But we don't want to have a porta potty in there. That's one of the main reasons why not. So a lot of the people that are using Sherwood are our residents. We do have a porta potty at Smith Park, which is, 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away on the other side of Cormier. But at this point, we are not putting in a porta potty at Sherwood, just an FYI, because I have a feeling some of you may have gotten that question by people. Other questions?
So no goats?
I had not at this time.
I guess I'm just planting that seed.
Yeah, no, and if someone has, and we've gone back, if someone knows that if it's poison ivy or something that is not safe, we will go back in there and we'll take care of it. We've sprayed before, we've removed some of those more dangerous type of plants. But if it's just regular growth, then really it's up to the homeowner if they want to keep their boundary clean to do what they need to do.
I might be wrong on this, but because it was a while, it was maybe last year, maybe even year before. I thought speaking of that, I thought one homeowner mentioned to me, that they were kind of doing that, taking care of that area. And I don't know if somebody from the village said, that's village property and blah, blah, blah. It just rings a bell with me. And then they said, well,
Not if it grows over the property line, it isn't. If it goes over the property line, then it's the home, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we don't have any, if it goes over the property line, they can do whatever they want to with it.
right. But I don't know how far back they were going. And then they were told, as I recall, that's kind of what we're talking, the property line thing. And then they came back with, well, since we're not able to take care of that area, now it's all overgrowing and it's ugly.
This probably happened, I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, Chris. I want to say about five years ago, maybe it was even longer than that. If I'm standing on the property line, there was 1 or 2 homes in particular that were actually clearing the woods back, like from me to you away,
Yeah.
like a long ways, and that's not appropriate.
Right.
That is village property. If it was like from me where the property line is to the other side of this table, where there's just a little bit of a clearance, where I don't have to keep on every week clipping the shrubs along that visible line, that I can understand. But when they were clearing, there were some folks were like really clearing a lot, and that.
So I remember.
I remember I had to tell a few people that's too far into the woods.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what you were talking
I
about.
think that's what they were getting at was, since they were told they really couldn't do that anymore, they were going too far, they were just kind of, their thought was, well, yeah, now we're not going in there and clearing it out, now it's overgrowing and it's really looking ugly.
They were making, they were really expanding their backyard is what they were doing, is making the park property part of their backyard. In fact, they were even putting wood piles and other personal items now in that area that they cleared, that's technically village property.
Yeah. Oh, I get that.
So there was a few things going on there that made us say, no, this has to stop at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So, I don't, again, I don't know if it's the same one or not.
Yeah, okay. Anything else?
I'd like to mention that the, Wednesday get-together at the community center seemed to be very well attended this past.
I heard it was, I was out of the state on vacation. Had a little getaway with my family, but David ran the concert. I think it was the fifties group, the Del Rey's. I'm assuming,
It was great. There were a lot of people there.
a lot of people, good. I know when we had them 2 years ago, they were very well received. They were a popular group. And I think we had them back at a food truck rally last year.
I was running a little bit late. I think I was running errands and I was riding by to stop in there. I couldn't find, they were parked up and down the street.
I was
And
gonna say,
I
parked
couldn't find a parking, I couldn't find a parking spot.
VFW actually said they ran out of food.
Oh.
So that's always a good sign. I think by 1:30,
Yep.
so they were out, completely out of food.
They ran out of ketchup at 11:30 or 12:30.
That's always when you know it's a good concert, when whoever's doing the food runs out.
For those community booths, the community groups that sell their food, we have so many special events throughout the year that the village runs. We always tell the groups, we'd rather you overbuy a little bit than underbuy, because if you overbuy, we'll buy the extra from you. Because it doesn't last long in our freezer or refrigerator. I mean, we've got a lot of events and programs that we can use that stuff at, and that helps out the community groups where they can make a little bit more money and not run out of food, and then just sell us at cost back what they paid for it, anything that's left over.
Good.
All right, I think that about does it, folks. Anything else from anyone, from me?
Anybody, anything for next meeting they want to see? No? All right, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.